Hi, this is Kelly Vess, and I'm live here this morning, and I'm going to share with you today my secret sauce, which is my 3 golden rules for treating speech sound disorders. So what I'm going to share with you today, I'm just going to see the camera here. What I'm going to share with you today is based on research of hundreds of children with speech sound disorders, of preschoolers with speech sound disorders, and which consonant clusters truly make a difference. And I'm also going to show you which consonant clusters truly do not make a difference. So this is my secret sauce, and it's really going to make a difference in your practice following the 3 golden rules. Now, I'm feeling very generous in sharing this information for the holidays, and I want to make sure to put it on a golden platter for you. And I want to make sure that it's remembered, because you should know this as well as you know your ABCs or your 1, 2, 3s. And when you do, it's going to be a game changer. When you know these 3 rules, you're going to know how to be highly effective with every preschooler you work with in treating speech sound disorders. So, in giving it to you on a golden platter, I want to go to Las Vegas. And let's pretend we're going to Las Vegas and staying at the Golden Nugget. And I'm going to provide analogies as if we were in Las Vegas and how we're going to choose a complex treatment target. So let's pretend that the casinos are open. We're all traveling next week instead of staying home like we have for the last 9 months. And we're in Las Vegas. And the first thing I'm going to do is rule number 1. Select the most complex treatment target possible with your maximum level of cueing. I could care less what the child can do on their own. People care too much about that. When you care about what the child can do on their own, you're undermining the child's potential, what the child is capable of. Not only that, but you're also undermining your ability as an agent of change, as someone that can make a difference. So don't worry about how severe the level of impairment is. Worry about what is this child able to do when you bring everything that you have to the table with a maximum level of cueing. Everything in your toolbox, take everything out. And that's when we're going to make a difference, when we focus on what the child could do. Don't judge a child based on how severe the level of impairment is. Okay, so remember that undermines your ability as a therapist and also the child's ability. So we're never going to do that. Let's get back to our golden rule. Number 1, we're going to play poker. So when it comes to choosing a complex treatment target, the most complex treatment target ever, remember this: 3-element blends always trump 2-element blends. So 3 of a kind is better than 2 of a kind, and 2 of a kind is always better than 1. So let's think about that. 3 of a kind. We want SKR, we want SPL, we want STR, we want SQU. These are always going to beat, always going to be the 2-element blends, which are like SL, you know what these are, ST, SN, which are always going to beat the 1-element blend, which might be L or R on its own. Okay? It's just like poker. 3 beats 2 beats 1. Also like poker, the later developing sounds are always going to beat the earlier developing sounds. The king is always more powerful than the 2. You don't want a 2. You don't care about the earlier developing sounds. You care about what's going to win the game. So think about that in terms of poker. Complex, the more complex the treatment target, the better the gains you're going to get. If you want to win in treating speech sound disorders, 3, 2, 1. More complex, less complex. We don't have time for that. That's junk. Okay, so that's the golden rule number 1. Golden rule number 2 is we want to create acrobatics in the mouth. So let's go. I'm missing my Cirque du Soleil. I go to Cirque du Soleil every year religiously, but not this year because of COVID. We want to create acrobatics in the mouth. And how do we do that with our clusters? We are going to take clusters that are very different from each other, and we're going to put them next to each other. So the child is going to have to go from 0 to 100 in the amount of time it takes to produce one sound. That's acrobatics in the mouth. They are called maximally distinct. They're very different. And we are going to create acrobatics by having the child challenging them to produce both of them at the same time. So how are we going to do that? We're going to take what's known as obstruent sounds. Obstruent sounds obstruct the airflow. Okay, so these are the sounds that are the fricatives. The friction, they create friction in the airflow, or the stops, they create stops in the airflow, or the affricates that do both, they stop and they create friction in the airflow. These are called obstruents. Then we have other sounds that are very, very different. These are called sonorants, in which the airflow flows across the tongue. So we have obstruents, sonorants. So the oral sonorants that float across the tongue are the L and the R, which are the liquids in our language. And we also have the W and the Ya, which are the glides in our language, in which the airflow simply glides. So what we have are two very, very different types of sounds. Now that's golden rule number 2. We want to take 2 very different types of sounds and put them together and create our Cirque du Soleil acrobatics in the mouth. And when we do that, the less complex sounds will naturally develop because we worked at the highest level. We're going to have a cascading effect. We're not going to waste our time on easier blends because the easier blends will naturally develop. So let's talk about that. Remember, we have to keep rule one in our mind. And rule 1 is complexity reigns. The more complex sounds, the better. So what are the most complex fricatives that we could use? Well, let's use the S sound, right? That's a great fricative to use. It's a later developing sound for a fricative. And what about the J sound? The affricate, that's a later developing sound. So when we have these late developing fricatives, we're going to want to put them with their obstruents. They stop the airflow. Let's put them with the glides, the liquids, so we can have some acrobatics going on. So the glides and liquids, let's take a sound like S and let's put it with something like SKR, which is the most complex sound in our language. We have the R, and the R is a liquid. And we have, so that would be a great combination. If we're doing the J, let's put the J with the R. So we have the J, which is an obstruent sound, an affricate. You stop and you also fricatize the airflow. And we're going to combine that with the R, in which the airflow glides over the tongue. So they're acrobatics in the mouth. And when we do the most complex acrobatics, like I said, there's a cascading effect, and the earlier sound combinations will naturally spontaneously develop. So the third golden rule of speech sound disorders. I want you to step back into Las Vegas for a minute, and you have these amazing performers in Las Vegas that are making the big bucks, right? And those are like the S blends and the ja, those blends. And that's because there's lots of sounds happening there. When you look at the letter S, which is in the alveolar place in the mouth, an alveolar fricative, you have 7 other sounds in that area. So I think of S as being kind of spicy. So S has all of these other sounds around it that they're influencing. They're not alone. There's a lot going on where S is at. It's a crowded concert hall. You can say the same thing about the J sound. The J sound, which is more palatal, alveolo-palatal. J, J, J. There's a lot going on there in the J sound in the mouth. When you look at the J sound in the mouth, you have J, cha, sha, ja, ta, sha, ja, ta, da. Okay, so there's a lot going on where the J is at. Let's look at another complex sound. What about the sound tha? Which brings us to our third golden rule. And the third golden rule is you can't be an outsider. So the tha is an outsider. It's occurring outside of the mouth. Are there any other sounds that are interdental, where your tongue is sticking out between your two teeth? No. So when I think about the th, it's very complex. It's a late developing sound. It hits rule 1, okay? Rule 2, it is not, the problem with two and th is a loner. There's no one else outside. It's outside on its own. So when I think of the outsider, I think of a street musician who's very complex and very talented, but there's no one else around. He's not influencing other people. So as a result of that being out there, you're not going to get big gains with the sound because of the specificity of the sound. Are there any other sounds that you produce here outside? So this is outside of the casino. This is in the street. You have the virtuoso. He has the same talent. He's as complex as the musician inside. But the problem is there's no one else around him. He's not influencing other sounds. So that is our Las Vegas trip. And I hope that describes well the importance of the 3 golden rules. Golden rule number 1, go as complex as possible. 3 element blends always beat 2. Golden rule number 2, go as maximally distinct as possible. Create Cirque du Soleil acrobatics in the mouth. Rule number 3, think about what other sounds you're going to impact when you work on a sound. If you work on the S blend, you're going to hit lots of other earlier developing sounds. If you work on a J blend, you're going to hit 5 other early developing sounds that are in that area of the mouth. If you're working on the TH is an outsider. Even though the sound is complex, there's nothing else going on out there. So you're not going to have impact on other sounds. So I hope that this is useful to you. Have a wonderful holiday. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.